President Biden is not the first president to use arms shipments to try to influence Israeli policy. As you know, former President Ronald Reagan on multiple occasions withheld weapons to impact Israel's military action.
This is the worst decision in the history of the U.S. Israel relationship to deny weapons at a time the Jewish state could be destroyed.
Historians would say, why is it okay for Reagan to do it and not President Biden? But let me ask you about
why is it okay? Well, can I say this? Why is it okay for America to drop 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end their existential threat war? Why was it okay for us to do that? I thought it was okay.
What's up, everybody? Major retired Richard Ojeda here. And full of crap, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham went ballistic on Kristen Welker in a blowout interview over President's threat to withhold arms from Israel.
To Israel, do whatever you have to do to survive as a Jewish state.
Senator, again, military officials say
whatever
the technology has changed. But let me ask you about how all
these
of this
military officials that you're talking about
let me ask you something.
Full of crap.
Lindsey Graham's fiery exchange with Kristen Welker on NBC's Meet the Press Sunday over President Biden's stance on Israel's arms has stirred the pot with MAGA nut jobs. Not surprisingly, Lindsey Graham is speaking out on their behalf. Lindsey Graham wants to come across like a pit bull, but behind the bluster lies a different reality. Lindsey Graham can be likened to the little Saturday morning chicken hawk that struts and squawks trying to prove himself to Foghorn Leghorn.
And you're telling me you're going to tell them how to fight the war and what they can and can't use when everybody around them wants to kill all the Jews? And you're telling me that if we withhold weapons in this fight, the existential fight for the life of the Jewish state, it won't send the wrong signal?
But behind all of his rhetoric, his actions paint a different picture. Graham's bootlicking support for Donald Trump, despite past insults, exposes his reputation as more of a chicken little than a legitimate political force. Recent vocal support for Israel and condemnation of Biden's approach to arms shipments resonate within a broader context, particularly his ties to influential figures like Jared Kushner. Kushner's notable statements and suggestions regarding a Palestinian relocation underscore a more complex agenda. In a February interview at Harvard University, Kushner lauded Gaza's waterfront property as very valuable and proposed Israel's removal of civilians for a cleanup operation.
In Gaza's waterfront property, it could be very valuable to, if people would focus on kind of building up livelihoods. You think about all the money that's gone into this tunnel network and into all the munitions. If that would have gone into education or innovation, what could have been done? And so I think that it's a little bit of an unfortunate situation there, but I think from Israel's perspective, I would do my best to move the people out and then clean it up.
This sentiment aligns with Graham's hawkish stance and hints at a shared vision for the region. Graham's unwavering loyalty to Kushner and Trump signifies a calculated strategy aimed at securing favor within the corridors of power, rather than principled pursuit of ethical foreign policy. It illustrates Graham's willingness to prioritize personal advancement over moral considerations. Lindsey Graham is a sellout that worships at the altar of the Republican dollar bill. He's not looking out for anyone except himself. Unfortunately, many undereducated Trump supporters see Graham as some kind of champion for conservative values, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Unfortunately, he's not the only actor on stage. The recent conversation between Representative Marge the Trainwreck Green and Maria Bartiromo sheds light on the growing rift within the Republican Party.
Well, Mike Johnson's owned by the Democrats, and that proved me to be right again. When I called the motion to vacate, it wasn't Republicans that saved Mike Johnson. It was Democrats that saved Mike Johnson. And when you have Nancy Pelosi, who was Speaker of the House when they impeached President Trump twice, and you have Jerry Nadler, who was chairman of the Judiciary Committee that led the impeachment against President Trump, voting to save Mike Johnson, that tells the American people everything that they need to know. Mike Johnson is owned by the Democrats and refuses to protect President Trump, even though he runs down to Mar-a-Lago every chance he gets and hugs him as tightly as possible.
Green's attempts to oust House Speaker Mike Johnson over bipartisan efforts signify a broader pattern of MAGA extremists and Trump loyalists collaborating to push their agenda. This coordinated effort of deceit involving figures like Lindsey Graham, Lauren Boebert, James Comer, and Jim Jordan aims to discredit President Biden through any means necessary. Their tactics are not only pathetic, but also a disservice to hardworking Americans striving to make ends meet. The contrast between their lucrative positions and the struggles of ordinary citizens is stark and infuriating. Instead of serving the people, these Republican conspirators engage in deception, neglecting their duty to govern effectively. The 118th Congress's abysmal track record only amplifies the frustration as they fail to address the pressing issues facing the nation. It's high time they prioritize the needs of the American people over partisan gamesmanship. In the end, these political actors resemble nothing more than a flock of bandy hens, puffing up their chest feathers and squawking loudly, but lacking the courage to confront the truth. They are spineless conspirators engaged in a subversion of democracy, perpetuating lies and deceit for their own gain. They wouldn't recognize the truth if it slithered up and bit them. It's time to see through their charade and reject their hollow promises. They are mere puppets for Donald Trump, serving his interests at the expense of the nation. America deserves better than these sellouts. It's an absolute must that we vote them out and pave the way for a brighter future. And that is an absolute fact. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.